Good evening, everybody. It's 6:33 actually now by that clock. Tonight is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. It's Tuesday, May 1st, 2018, and everybody's ready to stand up for the pledge, so let's do it. And pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Clerk Rattari, roll call, please.
Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Trustee Marks.
Present.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, our legal counsel Roger Zappa. Committee member here from Planning, Recreation, and Roads is Mike Springer.
Great, thank you. Public comment? I'm going to save you, Tom. I'll add you on in a second. Anybody? Mike, tonight?
Yes, I'd just like to reserve time with 6A, the citizen survey. Thank you.
You bet. Actually, it's going to be B, but that's fine. Okay. And anybody else want to speak now? Okay. No board member comment then in regard to that. So tonight's consent agenda is going to consist of approval of the regular meeting minutes of April 17th, bills payable in the amount of $80,685.71, budget amendment 2018-04, received committee and other reports including Marquette Area Wastewater Treatment Facility Advisory Board meeting minutes of March 15th, Recreation Committee approved minutes of March 20th and draft minutes of April 17th, Iron Ore Heritage Recreation Authority draft agenda of April 26th and draft minutes of March 28th, utility billing calendar for May, my supervisor's report, correspondence not requiring board action is the State of Michigan notice of hearing for UPCO case number U-20131.
Move to approve. Second.
Randy?
The deputy clerk and myself have to get together with the last set of minutes. There was a few grammatical errors in there, so I'd like to approve those minutes pending a few grammatical errors. It's not going to change the substance.
Some spelling.
Yeah. And,
It's a roll call.
and the budget amendment that the supervisor referred to is an increase in the revenue and expenditures to account for the Lions Field swing set grant from the Rotary Club of Marquette. And that was $5,350.
And that's going in.
That's going in, so that's why it's a budget amendment. And you are correct, it is a roll call vote.
Lynn?
Yep.
Randy, there's 3 E's left off of John Mark's name.
That's why we're gonna
Okay.
get together and change it.
All right.
There's quite a few little ditties.
Roll call vote, trustee Marks.
Yes. Yes.
Trustee LaRue.
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Trustee Everson.
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson.
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
That motion carries.
And we're approving the consent agenda by a roll call vote because of the
Budget amendment.
budget amendment, just so everybody knows. Okay, approval of the rest of the agenda. We're going to make one change, at least that I have. Under 6 for community linkage, we're going to add Tom Carpenter as A with an update from Board of Light and Power. And then that'll move the community survey to B. So Mike, just so you know, I moved you down to B.
It'll be under privileged comment, community linkage, which will be A. I move to accept the agenda as amended.
Support.
Anything else? I kind of jumped on, I didn't know if anybody else had anything. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Roger, can you shut your microphone? I think that's where we get that feedback off.
That would be no.
You can turn it back on when you're going to speak.
I think we get that feedback, I think it's when we have both microphones on, so only use it when you speak.
Okay, now we're down to 6A. So Tom, if you would be so kind, and thank you for coming. Appreciate that.
For those of you who do not know me, Tom Carpenter, Director of the Marquette Board of Light and Power, I wanted to come and give you guys an update on the sound issues that we're having in the township and what we've had previously done and what we're actually doing now to try to mitigate that problem. So I'd like to go backwards a little bit. When we started the project, we hired a consultant to come in and tell us what would be the best way to keep the sound issues from any residents in the township. So we didn't have anybody that was bothered. And they went through the federal, state, local codes and found that we have none in our township, in our city, in our county that we had to meet. So they went and used what they call the California Environmental Quality Act as a template. And that act outlines a decibel level that you can raise above ambient noise that won't affect anybody living nearby or recreating nearby. So when they went through the study, they found that we needed some significant upgrades to the plant so that we could meet those requirements under that act. And we spent probably in the neighborhood of $300,000 to $500,000 on a Moffett vent silencers, air handler silencers, turbo silencers, exhaust gas silencers, and then insulations in the wall and the ceiling and all the penetrations for pipes and wires that go through the walls. That was all completed during the construction of the project, and when we started running the units, we found that we had some issues in a very defined region on mostly isolated to Huron Street, where people could hear a low frequency kind of a thump, sound like a train every day. So after that happened, I went up and I visited, and I sat there and listened, and I could hear it. And it was very apparent to me at the time and everybody else in our company that it was likely the engines itself. It's a 514 RPM, 400-ton mass of steel rotating. It's that low frequency kind of rumble. So we called Wardsilla, the manufacturer of the engines, and asked them to come on site and help us evaluate what, if anything, we could do to mitigate that. They came on in, I believe it was December sometime. We spent an exhaustive week analyzing every opening in the building, the roof, the silencers, went up to all the houses, and came up with a report on the findings which you guys got last week. And what that told us is we have a little bit of a noise leakage through some of the building from the engines in a certain frequency range. So fast forward 4 months, why haven't we answered from them yet? Well, it's a slow process to try to find a way to mitigate that noise. And they have a team in Italy and Finland actually working together to come up with some kind of a solution, which they've been going out to a facility in Italy that's much like ours with 3 machines to see if it'll help. So we are actively working on it with the manufacturer and hoping to come up with something. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about that, let you know that we've been trying our best. And the other piece of that is, I gather that some people think we're trying to hide something, or maybe we're not sharing. Every report that we've gotten on this, you guys have gotten. Randy asked in the past if we could have the last report, and I believe you also got the first one. So any information we've had, we share. Full transparency, we're not trying to hide any noise issues. You guys have any questions for me?
Excellent. Anything? Yeah, hands. Go ahead, Randy.
Are you guys this summer going to ramp all 3 up? Because I know, are you going to be closing down the Shiras plant?
Yeah, I would estimate late June, maybe early July, these units will run significantly more than they do now.
Okay.
It's likely not going to be 24 hours a day or 7 days a week. It'll be dictated by the MISO markets and the prices.
Pete?
What is-
Oh, I thought yours was.
I was, he's my older.
I'm curious what the intention is, and I guess what bothers me is that we are scheduled to start those up regardless of whether we have the noise issue resolved or not. Has there been any consideration given to not starting them up until we've got an answer for that problem, or are we just going to start up and have to live with it?
The plan is to start up and run, and that's based on the economics of the machines and the distribution of power to everybody, including the township. So Hopefully, we have some answers prior to that, but if we don't, there will be some significant operational issues because of what's happening at Shirus and then the way we want to run these new units.
I mean, it's necessary that you set Shirus down on schedule as opposed to leaving this shut down longer until we resolve the noise issues, or?
We're going to be out of fuel at Shirus.
We didn't hear you.
We're going to be out of coal at Shirus, so come June, July, there's no more running Shirus.
That sounds like a stockpile problem to me.
No, it's an intentional plan to maximize our efficiency and our economy for everybody that buys power from us.
And I guess that's where my question is leading. It's an intentional program to shut those down and start this one up, and it just doesn't seem like there's any way around it, regardless of what the noise situation is, or regardless of how we've addressed it, or even if there isn't a method to address it, or if we never come up with a solution to it and we just say you're just going to have to live with it. It seems that we've just decided we're going to shut Shirus down, we're going to start these up, and that's just the way it has to be.
There's some other issues with running Shirus past that point that are going to be a much longer meeting than you guys want to have here tonight. I'll be happy to explain some of that at a future date. There's environmental issues, there's coal combustion residual compliance issues, there's capital project issues that are a much bigger discussion than this. We have the brand new power plant that's going to be a significantly more efficient units to run the way we can play the market. And we have to do that for the ratepayers.
It seems a shame that we're taking this step and we have nothing in our forecast as to when we're going to resolve the noise issue.
Unfortunately, the timing might be such that that's the case.
Well, I would pose, excuse me if I can talk, the changeover from the two systems was probably pretty well planned, and that's why they spent their coal down, not expecting that there was going to be an issue with noises. So, I mean, I'm not defending anybody, but
True statement.
it makes sense to me. You've got this huge system you have to try to get going and coordinate and timing and hookups, and it's a process.
Shipping coal into the harbor is not real simple. It's not something you do in short order. Not something you do for a short duration. We can't ship a week's worth of coal in a day. We need to ship 25,000 tons a time by freighter. So it's not something we're going to go buy us some time to mitigate a problem.
Pete?
My question, I think last week I asked, last meeting, the difference between your first unit and the one you accepted. How much of the difference was there with the decimal noise and that?
No, they're the exact same thing. The first unit, when they were originally ordered, they were going to be off the assembly line, placed in the queue to be built. The ones that we actually got had just happened to come off the assembly line and somebody else canceled their order. So they're exactly the same machines. No difference.
When you were up on Huron Street, I believe that you only had one unit running?
The day I
When you were up there with Pete up there, you had one unit running?
honestly cannot remember if there's one or two
Well,
or three.
yeah, there was one unit running, that's what you heard there. Now you're magnifying that by 2 times, you have 2 more kicked on. And also, in the book, in your brochures and different, on the computer, the places where they have these generators, they're not right across from a residential area. I don't see any of them right across from the area, residential area. Your solar panel, well, why would you cut all the trees down for a solar panel when you could put the solar panel somewhere else? And that would have helped the sound with the trees there.
So a few questions. The ward solar facilities in general, they're all over the world, and they can be in any neighborhood, field, out in the woods, place you can imagine. I've seen examples of plants that are literally right in the middle of town. And I've seen plants like you're referring to, they're out in the field, way
Right.
from anybody. That's really not the complete issue. I mean, they can be anywhere. The solar panels, that decision was made based on some sound studies and access to our substation distribution by the folks that were involved with it at the time.
Did you ever think about moving those solar panels and planting trees in there again to help the plan?
We've not considered that, no.
No.
And I don't, by the time you planted trees and by the angle of the hill, I don't know that would even help.
Well, you're going to be here more than 10 years too, so. And the example was with a railroad, it's the same decimal as a railroad, a train, I guess they had one of the,
That's my best way to describe it, what I heard, and I don't know if anybody can verify that, but that's kind of how it sounded to me,
but you don't have a train sitting there 24 hours a day,
right?
you know, so I think we do have a problem, and I'm not too anxious about, like Dave said, to get started on it, and I'm just going to, what are you going to do about it? Because it's not going to be satisfactory to the people up on the hill who spent a lot of money for their houses and that, and have this thing put in there, you know.
Yeah, while we're looking into it, the folks from Italy were here probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, Italy and Finland, with a team of 6 people. We had some extensive discussions about what they could do. They had a variety of ideas, but they needed to go test them before they could verify that they would actually work. And I was supposed to get an answer from them last week. I contacted the individual yesterday, knowing I might come visit you guys today, and he didn't get it, so he was gonna pursue that for me this week. Apparently Europe's on holiday today. I was hoping to have it before I came here, but the entire country's on some kind of holiday, so they couldn't get it.
So the noise is basically coming from inside the plant. It's not on the tower, the chimneys or whatever, I would say.
Right. A lot of what the noise study individual found was it was emanating through the facility itself, through the walls. And those were designed for acoustic dampening. It is not hitting this particular frequency that we're getting out.
Yeah.
I looked at the report, and I'm definitely not a sound engineer, and I would never pretend to be. But the decibel level, the actual decibel level that the noise, it raises the ambient noise on, is not that great. It's more of a tone thing. And I think the individuals that are hearing it would confirm that.
Yeah, but if you have to listen to that tone all the time, you know, to you, it's just a tone, here's a decibel or something like that. But the people who have to live up and listen to that day in and day out, it's pretty important to them.
For sure.
You know, and so I think you really should put some serious thing. I know you're being serious about it, but it's just not going to cut it right now. When you kick all 3 in, you're going to have some problems. They're going to be hollering like heck.
That's why I'm here. I want to know you, I want you guys.
Well, we're telling you that your plan as right now with 1, and you can hear it, and you're going to add 2 more, it's not going to fit the bill.
So just so you know, the difference between 1, 2, and 3, we're all part of that study and report, and there's not a significant variation in what traverses up the hill and onto Huron Street.
Yeah.
Right, so when we studied this, and we had Wardzilla folks here and also Shiner and Associates here, we ran 1, we ran 2, we ran 3. So the change in operation between what we're doing today, periodically during the week, and what happens in June isn't gonna be a step change in the noise.
I kind of disagree with that.
Sir?
Oh, sir, you gotta wait till public comment, Pete.
Anything else?
There's been times, you know, the people in town who are hearing this don't know if it's 1, 2, or 3, right?
Well, they're listening to 1, when 1 was on, that's what they're listening to. And you were listening to when 1 was on.
How do you know it's 1?
Pardon me?
That's what I'm asking. How do you know? It could have been 2 at that same time. When we were doing that testing, we were testing 1, 2, and 3 engines together in various combinations of load and output, right?
Well, you never had 2 and 3 on when I was up there talking to Pete up there. You only had 1 on because I asked.
Well, I think he's talking about, you're talking about a number 1, number 2, and number 3. He's talking about one
Generator.
generator,
No,
2
no.
generators, 3 generators.
No, what I'm saying is when you have all 3 generators online, that it's gonna be a similar elevation of the frequency and noise that you're hearing. And some of the days that people are hearing the noise, there could have been 2 engines on, there could have been 3 engines on. We have ran these in every different combination you can imagine over the last 9 months. There's not a distinct difference in the uptick in decibels and frequency based on the studies because of 1, 2, or 3 different engines.
Okay. John?
Sound studies are very difficult to understand. The science of it is in-depth engineering. I think what's going on in your system is not something that can be questioned by the average person or even the average engineer. But I think what we're getting tonight, and I want you to correct me if I'm wrong, is you're making a commitment that you're aware of the problem that's been recognized by the residents. You've been there, you know it's there, and you're attempting to find what the source is, and you're using the expertise of the manufacturer and their engineers and their sound study people to conclude what it is that they need to attack to alleviate the problem. What I'm getting from you tonight, and this is what I want you to correct me on, you're representing your organization, and I think that this is a commitment that we know there's an issue, we know it needs to be addressed, and we're going to continue to search for resolution of it. And if that's the commitment, and I think that's about all you can do tonight, beyond what's been done. I appreciate the sound study information we received. Actually, that to the reader tells you that they have found the problem, they know there is a problem, but they don't know yet how to address alleviating it. And so if your commitment today is on behalf of the Power and Light, is that you're going to stay with it until it's resolved. It's not going to be ignored. It's not going to be accepted as what's perhaps been. If that's it, I appreciate it. And I don't know that until more information is with us, I don't know that we can ask for more. Is that your commitment?
So from the beginning, from the very first time we got a complaint, we've been doing our very best to find an answer.
And you will continue to do that.
We're going to do everything we can to find that answer, if there is one. You know, I cannot promise anybody in this room that there's going to be a fix to a certain frequency. But we're going to try our best to find it, and we're hiring the best people we can to help us in that process.
When is the next point that you'll be back, or?
Well, I'm hoping to get the final evaluation from the Wardsilla team in Italy and Finland. And what they told me when they left was they would be very surprised if they could not come up with a recommendation. That was their words. The sound study engineer who was here, I asked him, I was like, are you going to be able to provide us something that can change this? He said, I'd be very surprised if I can't. So I'm waiting for that feedback from him and that team in the two countries that are working on this.
Can you give us a date?
I could touch base tomorrow. I can let Mr. Gerard know tomorrow, because that's when Renato was the individual I worked through, was supposed to get back to me.
Okay. Failing that, I realize that you kind of inherited this thing, and I respect the fact that you're doing all you can to address the problem. I appreciate that. But if too much time goes by, if another month or so goes by, and we have not been made aware that there is some attempt being made to alleviate it, some action being taken to alleviate it, then I'd like you to take back to your board of Power and Light that we'd like to have the same members come and visit with us that visited with us and told us there would not be a pollution problem.
Well, I would, they're all gone. All the individuals who came and actually pulled some of the old files to see what was told to this board, and they no longer work there.
Well, the letters that you have read on pardon me, the letters that you have read that were written about our concern that there could be a problem, and the answers that we received came from the board saying there would not be a pollution problem, either air or sound. They're the people that I'm going to want to address. And so they're all good people. They're all elected to serve, and I'm sure they're doing the best they can. But they're the people that sat right here and said there'd be no pollution.
I don't know what was told to you guys at that time. The intent from the beginning, when we hired Shiner and Associates, was to keep everything within this California Environmental Act, because it was the nuisance noise issue that we didn't have an ordinance for. Now, what they told you they were gonna do at the time, I don't know. But we've done our best to stay within that act, and it looks like we have.
Well, I'm sure they'd have, but they're the people that we need to talk to if nothing is done. If it can't be looked the other way. It can't, we cannot, in all fairness to our citizens, let someone say to us that perhaps there is no resolution. If there's no resolution, then we're going to have to do something else at another level, or they are, as individuals in a class action suit,
John,
Gonna have-
let's not get carried away. Go ahead.
Pardon?
I said, let's not get carried away.
So, I'd like to clarify one comment I made, and when I say I can't promise anything, is because I don't want to make promises I can't personally keep. I'm not a sound engineer, I don't work for Wärtsilä, I'm not sitting in the factory in Italy. So until they tell me they have something definitive, I'm not gonna repeat that to you guys.
Yep.
I'm just not gonna do it.
Okay.
They were very confident they could find something. The individual who left here has a master's degree in this stuff. That's all he does. He travels the world in sound studies. And he told me, I will be very surprised if we cannot come up with something to help.
We just,
Okay.
we
That's
need
my
to,
takeaway from that conversation.
we need to let you do your job. And if you can get some information this week, that would be great. If you want to
Yeah,
contact
I'll go
Randy.
Talk to them tomorrow.
If you want to come back to our next meeting on the 15th, if you have information by then, or if there's something, you can type up, just go ahead and forward it.
Only if you schedule.
Whatever
when it's raining.
works.
It's too nice out tonight.
Yeah, that's fine. Whatever you can do. Obviously, you're working on it. You know our concerns. We'll just take it a step at a time and see what happens. We obviously don't have any more answers today.
No,
So-
the only reason I'm here is I wanted you to know we're working on it. We're cognizant of the issue. We're not ignoring it. We're not hiding anything from anybody. We're fully transparent. We're doing the best we can.
With the information you have.
Okay.
That's clear. Okay, anything else from the board?
One more question.
Yes, Pete.
You said they have one in the downtown area. Kind of curious, where is that?
Shakopee, Minnesota.
Where is it?
Shakopee, Minnesota. It's over by the Twin Cities somewhere. I can send a link, pictures of the plant. Beautiful, beautiful plant, by the way.
Same as we have here?
It's a different variation of the same machine, it's a reciprocating engine of a certain size. I think they have, I don't remember offhand, 2 or 3 units.
All right,
It's
that's
close to
good.
town. It's by a residential business area.
You want to spell it? You want to spell it?
Ernie?
You talk about Shakopee, I'm a little familiar with the area. They don't have big high-rises or that, at that,
Gee,
it's more of the small businesses, residential area, so they don't have any elevated areas like we're talking about up in Huron Street. So that would be one concern, when you say it's there in the business or residential area. It appears that the sound is only affecting those at an elevation above certain point. The homes that are close to it, that are on the level, don't seem to be affected by it at all. So it's the elevation that's doing it. So when you look at other locations, you also have to look and see if there's elevations similar to this here one and see what what effect it may be having there. And you talked about units 1, 2, or 3, you're running 1, then 2 or 3. I don't think it makes much difference to the people up in here and whether you're running 1, 2, or 3 or anything. It's the sound itself in that too. So-
I agree completely, and that was the point I was trying to make, is when we're running either 2 units at a time or 3 units at a time, there's gonna be a marginal, if any, difference in the sound. I understand that. But I wanted to be clear that when we change our operations in July, it's not gonna be a huge step change from what you're hearing today, maybe when we're running 1. We ran 1 today. Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Lynn, was there a vibration problem also, a feeling?
You know, I've heard scuttlebutt about that. Nobody's directly approached me about that issue. I can tell you I'd be very surprised if there's a true vibration that transmits anywhere. I've stood right next to the machines on the concrete and not felt the vibration. So the likelihood of that transferring all the way through into a neighborhood, I would surprise me.
Thank you.
One last thing.
Sure.
I actually would like to invite you guys down for a tour if you're interested. It'd be great to show you some of the mitigation things we've done, how these are configured, where the machines are. So anytime you want to do that, you can get a hold of me on the plan.
Okay. As a board, we have to, you probably know, we can't just all show up. We have to
Couple at a
schedule it
time,
and, yeah.
One at a time, whatever.
Otherwise-
If you're interested.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
It might help to see it, understand it. You could come in when it's actually running and actually see what that feels like, outside and inside.
Okay. Maybe Randy can coordinate that with the board members that want to go. Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate you
Thank you.
coming.
Thanks.
And you volunteered to come, too. We didn't even ask you. Okay. Mike, do you want to talk first on 6B, the survey? Okay.
Mike Springer, I'm here tonight on behalf of the Planning Commission. You have a document in your packet you're seeing now for the second time, the citizen survey. You're going to note that there's probably very little changes from what you saw, I believe, 2 weeks ago. And there's some reasons for that. I want to go into just a little bit of history with this whole survey. First of all, as you know, we're updating our master plan, and that's basically based on this survey, and we'll also have a public input session. Based on that, that's what comes up next. We're working on Chapter 5 right now, but the next thing is public input. So in order to be able to move forward with our master plan, we've got to get the survey out and set up our public meeting. So it's important that we move ahead with this. First of all, I also want to recognize Trustee Marks for taking the time to go through that document, and you wrote a lot of notes in there, and you obviously spent some time on that. And also Manager Gerard with his comments that the Planning Commission looked at and considered. This document, what I have right here is a document we sent out back in 2011. It was an 8-page survey. And Randy and I were just talking about how much did this cost us, but he thinks it's close to 20. I remember someplace close to 10.
About
But
10.
we just don't have that kind of money anymore where we can hire a consultant that will do these surveys. And these people that do these surveys, they're trained in this, just like engineering. They understand about validity and statistics, and of course, we've all heard the statement, you're going to get the answers based on the questions you ask. So what we're trying to do is stick as closely to this format as possible, because this is, as a consulting company. But what we've done is we've reduced it to 4 pages instead of actually 7 pages of questionnaire and 1 letter. So we've reduced the size of it, partially for the cost. And the other big cost saving is that we're doing it in-house. So we don't want to get too far away from the structure that's been sent before us. So we're doing it in-house. I'd like to say this because to save money, but I don't think we have the money. So this is real important. And also, the staff planner, Isaac Peterson, sent planning commissioners some links and some information about how to build a survey. And I went through first 4 out of 10 of them. It's amazing how much is involved in understanding and what you have to do when you're conducting a survey like this. So Mr. Peterson and Mr. McCarthy have been working on this, and we think we have a really good document here, and we'd really like you to move this forward. So what we're doing, and I understand the concern, you know, so much is about, especially now with the dark store issues, how are we going to pay for these things? And I totally get that, because the money's not there like it used to be. So one of the things with this, though, is what we're doing is we're trying to find out what the interests are out there. And then from that, we're supposed to build a capital improvements program. And then that's supposed to come to the board, and the board decides on what kinds of things that they want to fund. So what we're asking right now is kind of like an interest survey. And I'll give you an example. I was a high school guidance counselor, and I asked to work with young people with some career education stuff. I had to not only look at their interests, but I also had to look at their aptitudes and their abilities and how they were doing grade-wise. But the interest part is the important part, and that's the part that drives somebody. And so once we determine what the community's interests are, then it's our responsibility to try to figure out how are we going to meet those needs. And I understand wanting to know about who's going to pay for this and ask those kind of questions, but I really think that what we want to do is get their interests and then work on how are we going to fund these things. That's my opinion. One other thing here at the bottom of this survey, and this was conducted by ETCA Institute for Marquette Township in August of 2011. At the bottom of this page 7, and I'm going to ask the Planning Commission to make sure they include this because it's not in your packet. There's these 3 lines, the statement. Your response will remain completely confidential. The address information on the sticker to the right will only be used to identify areas with special interest. So we want a confidential survey. We want to try to keep with the structure that has been set before us. And we want to find out the interests, even if right now we don't know how we're going to pay for that. I hope that you will move this back to the Planning Commission and so that we can get this out to the public and continue to move on working on our master plan. Thank you.
Any questions for, yep, Dan?
You say that,
You might want to stay up there, Mike, please.
you want to get their ideas and then figure out a way to pay for them.
Yes, sir.
I think that if there has to be a way to pay for them, they should know that up front, rather than try to, they may not want something if they know they have to pay for it, I guess is
And
where
I
I'm
agree,
going.
and actually Mr. Marks made that comment and pointed that out the last time. And I understand that. That's a critical question. How are we going to pay for this? And are they willing to pay for this stuff? But right now, we just want to find out what that's the next step. What we want to do is find out what they're interested in. What are they satisfied with? What are the things that they're dissatisfied with? What are the things they'd like to see more of? You know, get their ideas. And that's what, as a planning commission, then we go through this, we set our goals and objectives, and then we try to determine, so how do we meet the needs of our residents, our citizens? And then that's when we work up capital improvement programs, and we say that this is what it's going to cost to meet this need. This is what it's going to cost to fix our roads. This is what it's going to cost for matching funds for any grants. You know, whatever the particular item is, ambulances or fire apparatus. You know, so did that answer your question, Dan?
Yeah, but they may not want it if they have to pay for it.
That's true. I agree.
So I
don't disagree with that.
yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? 3 hands.
I agree. If they know they have to pay for it, like I've been a proponent of a lot of things, that might change their survey result. So I think that should be plain as day in the survey, that we're looking possibly for, you know, if we want expanded recreation, are you willing to fund a small millage for that? Or replacement of, the fire situation is a little bit different, but we can't carry a fund balance, so if we have to replace fire apparatus, you have to go out for a small millage there also. So I do agree that for transparency, we should say that, are you willing to fund this?
Okay. And there are a couple of questions in there that address that. And matter of fact, you pointed out in your thing about combining those or moving the question up as to whether or not people are willing to consider a millage. And those questions are in there. We just didn't want to inundate it with millage questions.
Dave?
Now, the only question that doesn't really have a millage question attached to it is number 9. I'm sorry, not number 9, number 11. How supportive would you be of Marquette Township purchasing additional land? That's the only one that doesn't have a millage question directly attached to it. The other one is number 7, which addresses the millage on questions 4 and 5. That has a millage attached to that. The millage is also attached to the fire department apparatus, the replacement and maintenance of that. The last one down here is that Manager Gerard put out there, and I had a question on what he actually wanted to put on the end of that, is number 9, where it says currently Marquette Township services are provided by the Marquette County Sheriff's Department under a contract funded for 80 hours per week of additional patrol coverage. How supportive are you of the Marquette Township maintaining the current Marquette County Sheriff's Department contract hours? And I think if funded by additional millage is what you wanted to add to the end of that sentence?
Yeah, the question that the board's been talking about is, would that...
Randy?
Would that be the question the board's been talking about from a budget standpoint is, right now it's funded strictly out of the general fund to the tune of just under $200,000, and the discussion has been, should that be shifted to a millage to free that $200,000 of general fund money to start building the fund balances back up? So all that I suggested was at the end of that, it would be to say, obviously they support it because we've been funding it forever, but would they still support it if it were millage funded?
So you just want to add on the end of that sentence, you just want to add if funded by additional millage?
Yes. That was my suggestion. Unless the board is considering not continuing the contract, which I don't believe the board is. I think that's something that we still would be building into our general fund contract, but we will reach a point where there's not enough general fund revenues coming in to continue to fund that as other expenses go up. That's the longer term concern.
All right. The other question that we don't have a millage question directly attached to is 11, and that's about buying additional recreation property. And anything that comes out in the purchase of additional recreation property is going to come out with a millage to pay for it. That's where that question gets asked, in my opinion, is if you find a piece of property that you want to purchase and you write the grants and there's matching revenue that has to come up with to pay the in-kind match, or however you buy this piece of property, that's a question that you have to pose to the residents at this time. It's the same as when we did the road millage. We come up with the idea, we got their input, we held the educational stuff, and then we put it on the ballot and we ask them on the ballot if you want to pay the millage for this. But there was a lot of work went into that ahead of time, a lot of planning went into that ahead of time before we asked the question. And if we had asked the question and it had come back 70% no, then we just would have went back to the drawing board and did something else. But the fact is, we did the work ahead of time and it come back yes. So that's what I think is we ought to leave with 11. We ought to leave it if we're looking for their interest to buy a piece of property, or we're looking for their interest to expand our recreational facilities. Do we have any money to do that? No. We've said that enough here that we don't have any money in our pocket to go out and do that. But if the right piece of property comes along and there's a lot of things going on out there and everybody's aware of that, but that comes up to a millage question at that point, and you have to present the whole scenario. You have to present what you're looking at, how much it costs, what's available in grants. Present the whole thing to them. It goes back to the education of the residents again, so that they can make an informed decision. And that's why that was left without a millage question directly attached to it. And the last one is number 13, and it says, how important do you feel it is for Marquette Township to develop an ordinance that would permit and regulate the establishment of medical marijuana facilities? When this was brought up the first time, and the board had a consensus that they weren't interested in pursuing an ordinance that would allow medical marijuana facilities in the township, that was made over one meeting with the information that was presented, maybe 2 meetings where we discussed it, but the residents have never been asked. The residents have never been asked if they're interested in pursuing that or not. And it concerns me that if we eliminate this question, we are subjecting all of our prejudice with respect to marijuana, and we're going to subject the rest of the residents to that, regardless of what the benefits are for marijuana out there. There might be 70 or 80% of the people that are interested in putting some kind of a regulated facility in here. And I don't think we know enough about it. It's another one of those questions where if their residents, if the large enough number of residents out there would like us to study that, then as a board we should study that. We should get all the questions answered, and we should know exactly what we're talking about before we just out of hand say, no, we're not going to do it. That's why I lobbied hard at the Planning Commission meeting to leave that in there. I'm still lobbying hard to leave it in there. I just think we need to ask the residents.
Andy?
They're going to be asked this fall because it's going to be on the ballot for recreational marijuana use. So since this was written the day after I left the conference, the director of education, of elections was going to the Board of Canvassers, and they placed that on the ballot for November. So I'm thinking, I don't know what we're going to do if it passes, because there's going to be recreational use, and I don't know what we're going to do about that.
The use of marijuana in a recreational capacity does not answer the question of, do we want to write ordinances that would allow growers and transporters and distribution centers in the township? That's the question that still has to be answered, and that's what it means by establishment of medical marijuana facilities. And just, you know, I've done a lot of reading on it, and there's a lot of good things that come out of marijuana. It's not just the 60s and 70s that everybody's got in their mind when they think about marijuana. There's a lot of positive things that come out of that, and there's a lot of good medical stuff that happen with that when they take out the benefits of that and leave the rest of it behind. I think if the residents want to pursue that, and that's why I would promote leaving it in there, if the residents want to pursue it, then I think we ought to study it and see what we want to do about it.
I mean, the only comment I'm making is if it's approved recreational, they can grow their own. So it really doesn't matter for an ordinance, because they can do what they want. They can grow their own and do what they want.
Pete?
I don't agree with, you have to put the millage out. Do you want to buy for it first? Because when you're researching like recreation, you know, just like the old saying, build it and they will come. Well, when you want ideas, you always ask the question, what if? What if? If we would have asked the question, do you want to pay for the road millage, you would never had the 3-year plan. Because we sat in here 18 to 18 visits, and Dave was there with us, and then when that one lady come in, and she was very against it. But when we sit down and explain it to her and what it's going to cost and that, she went out in favor of it. So when you're looking for ideas, what the people are thinking, you want their creative side of it, and then it's up to someone else to come find out the grants or something like that. Who would say that this tunnel over there, remember we talked about that? Who's going to pay for it and all this other thing? No, it's not going to cost, you know, for the township to build it. But that's what you do when you're in a creative mode. Okay, what if? What if this? What if this? What would they like? what's our younger people gonna like? What do we wanna serve for our residents to make it a good place to live, play, and work? And I think you want their ideas, you want the juices to flow, and then it's up to someone else to look for grants and stuff like that. So I think the question is a fair question, and I think it's a good one, so.
Anybody down here? John? No? Ernie?
Couple of things, just following up on Dave and Pete's, on 9, all we're asking them, should we continue to provide it? If they want us to continue to provide it, then we're gonna have to find the money somewhere to do it, and that. And
Or you don't do
we
it.
take it either out of the general fund, or we go for a millage, one or the other, and that. But we're trying to get their thoughts on what we're doing, is that what they want, and that. If it comes back and not important, okay, then we know which direction we wanna go. They're gonna have to start cutting back on it, it's not important to them, so we can use the money someplace else. As far as 11 on purchasing property, here again, to me, it's just asking them, do you want to do something like this? And if they come back and say very supportive, fine, then we know we have to go out and see what we got. And if we have to do that, go to a millage, then we go to a millage on an election. And then at that point in time, we'll find out very quickly how far they want to go and that. And I think the same way with number 13 on marijuana. To me, looking at that as an individual, I'd put probably not sure, because I don't know what an ordinance would look like. I don't know which way we're going. So you may get a lot of people saying they're not sure. So, okay, then we have to then make a decision as to what an ordinance would look like for the township. Would it be plus or minus all the way down the line? So we're asking for their thoughts on that. And once we get the thoughts, then we have a lot of work to do.
That's why we get paid the big bucks.
That's it.
I'm not gonna go there at all. But that's my feeling, is we're trying to get them to respond to us. I know where our manager's coming from. He's concerned with the dollars in the township and that. But we can't move forward if we don't have dollars. If we don't have dollars, there's only one place we can go, and that's to the people. And at that point in time, they're gonna have to tell us that it's either yes or no. If you really want it, they're gonna have to give us some money to do it.
But if you don't know what they're thinking of, we don't know where to go,
Right.
how to set it up.
Mike, do you have a cover letter yet? Do you have a cover letter yet?
Not that I know, no.
Okay, Randy?
Probably be a similar format. I can give you this.
You can, that's okay. You can just make me a copy later. I probably have it. Thanks. I'll just make a copy. Randy?
I guess just a couple of comments to clarify where some of my comments came from. Primary purpose of township government is to provide health, safety, and welfare. That's our primary purpose. Some of the things that revolve around health, safety, and welfare should not be questions asked of the residents. That's a operational decision of the board, the governing body that's been elected to represent the residents. As a for instance, what happens if you have all of your responses come back saying they don't support the sheriff? You gonna cancel it? You gonna cancel the contract? We're not gonna do that? With the marijuana question, you're missing a significant point. It's a federal law violation, still. Why would you ask the residents if they want you to violate federal law? That's not a question to put to the residents. Those that need it have the ability to get it now. If you put an ordinance in place, you're going to have to enforce that ordinance. Take a look at the states and the communities that have put it in place and see what that enforcement is and what it costs, staff-wise and enforcement time. You pass an ordinance, you're obligated to enforce it. We have an ordinance right now that we've been trying to enforce 2.5 years, and it's still not enforced. It's not an ordinance, it's a position of the board. This board is on record saying, no, not in this community, multiple times. Why would you ask that question in a survey? If recreational marijuana referendum passes, as of today, it still contains the option for communities to say yes or no in their community. That language is in it. So That's the reason I'm bringing these things up, because these are, in my opinion, health, safety, and welfare, basic tenants that we are obligated to provide to the residents. But it's your decision, certainly, but I want to give you my 2 cents worth.
That's why we pay you the big bucks.
I wish.
One more question. What I didn't say in my remarks is that sometimes when you got an idea and you're trying to explain it to the residents, sometimes when they say no, don't always mean no. No is, I need more information, or I don't understand it, so you have to sort of decipher from there. So, and it's been proven, especially in the road committee, for this road project, a no is not a no, it just want more information, so.
Okay, I think the cover letter is gonna be pretty important as far as conveying what we wanna try to say. Questions and answers are so subjective, especially in writing. And unless we make it very clear in the cover letter that this is all money-driven, I think that's the first thing we have to look at. The second thing is, we're not here to, in my opinion, my understanding, is we're not here to supply the fluff things for the public, the wants. We're here to supply the needs. And if the wants can be taken care of, then that's fine. Recreation is not a need. It might be some people, it might be more important than food, who knows? But we have to go by what these people need, not what they want. That doesn't mean we don't ask them what they want, because that can turn into a need, but we still have to focus, I think, on what we can provide, what they're paying us to provide. Excuse me, I'm really sorry. I agree with Randy 100%, and that was gonna be my first comment, is marijuana has no business being on here until the state or the federal government or somebody decides what we can and can't do. That's what we have to do. We wanna find out where people want us to put their money. In my mind, the survey has no business talking about ordinances. I understand why that's important, but we can address that another time. This needs to focus on, where do you want us to go next? We've done the roads, that was the major part of the roads, and the recreation and the snow plowing and everything was a big part of that last survey. And because we needed to know what the people needed to continue to function here and to want to live here. The recreation part, yeah, that's important. How much? That's what the public has to tell us. How much are they willing to fork out for it? We've been pretty clear about how much money we don't have anymore. And it's possible as we grow, that level will go up a little bit, but it's not gonna be gangbusters. But I went through this in the beginning and gave my opinion on some of the questions. And I think the committee implemented them pretty well. So, like I said, first and foremost, the cover letter. I'll look at this and see my 2 cents. I'll give it to the board, we'll put it in their mailboxes and see. But we've got to address the money thing right up front. And however we word that, you don't have to worry about it being in the rest of the questions. How many people are going to read the cover letter? Probably not. But at least we have ourselves covered then too. We try to explain to them. And if it's a short, quick letter, short and sweet, to the point, you know, some of this we're not going to have to put in because we're not talking about this other company anymore. So we might be able to get it nice and easy. But we have to remember it's the needs first and then the wants second. And if you want to structure this for the needs and then focus on the wants, the ambulance thing is going to be a conversation. We're going to have to figure out, I'm at the fire department, how we continue to fund that is going to be a whole nother discussion. I don't care if it's on here, it's probably a good idea. People don't understand that that's a separate funding mechanism, and they don't understand about the extra cost and how that money comes out of the general fund for the police department. They don't know the mechanics of that.
we need to educate them about that. If this intent is just to get a rough idea of what people are, what's their passion, what they feel safe about, that's okay. But like Randy said, how much credence are we gonna put in this? If 100% of all these people come back and say they don't want police protection because they don't know how we're funding it, what are we gonna do? Do we actually sit down and look at that? And then, you've gotta figure out if everybody answers these and there's a significant percentage of answers, positive answers on all of them, or I hate to say positive, could be negative too. How much time are we gonna put into these questions? I'm glad you knocked them down, because this has us going in a bunch of different directions. How are we gonna use this? It was clear with the last survey that roads was it. That's what people wanted to do, and recreation was secondary. So we did that. We did a great job, thanks to these guys and the rest of the committee, getting the funding ready and getting the roads done, and people are thrilled with that. And then our second focus was the trails and the parks, and we've been doing that. So I'm concerned that there's so many different angles here that we're trying to get input from, and not that that's not important, but if you want your biggest bang for your buck, it's like a millage question almost. You can't ask, which do you want, A, B, C, D, E, F, and G? You've got to hone it down somehow to get exactly what people want, if it's going to be effective. If this is just, we're putting a lot of time and money into this already, just from, staff hours and what we expect to spend. But you may not be able to hone it down this far on so many subjects. I think that's all I had to say. Now I got rebuttal. Dave?
I'd simply like to comment that this survey was put together and is going to be used to drive the development of the master plan review. And that's what it's for. It's not to provide a mandate to the board. It's just to drive the development and the amendment of the master plan. That's why it was put together by the planning commission.
Pointing a direction. It's still.
Certainly. And if 100% of the people come back and say they're interested in something that's going to cost us a fortune, then the next thing you have to do is research it, and how much is it going to cost us, and now are you willing to pay for it, because a millage question has to appear on a ballot anyway. Then their 100% gets to be whittled down by how much they're really willing to pay for to have it done. And that's.
Did we end up with 14 or 13? How many we got? Excuse me, 19, 15 millage questions?
Well, I think the only one that could turn out that's not really addressed is number 11, about purchasing recreation property. That's the only one that could turn into an additional millage question that's not already addressed in there. Question number 7 addresses the millage. Are you willing to pay for the 4 and 5? That's addressed with number 7. So and then you get down to and I can appreciate Manager Gerard's response on the one about the additional patrol coverages. And yeah, we're mandated to provide safety and all this for the residents, but it's a matter of, there's all kinds of townships operating around here without 80 hours a month additional patrol coverage. So we can eliminate that if it's the will of the people. That can be eliminated, and we're not leaving them to the wolves. That just means they're not willing to ante up to have that done. I don't have any particular problem if you want to add if funded by additional millage on the end of that question. I don't think it makes any difference one way or the other.
I don't know that it does either, because they don't understand how we're paying for it. They don't know that we're paying extra for it right now. I don't think they do. The majority of the township, they don't understand that we've got almost like dual coverage. I don't think they understand that.
Well, and that goes back to that's why the board goes about educating them when that question comes up, and 100% of them say, absolutely, we want that. And then in the November ballot, it appears as a millage question. And the 100% go down to 50. that's when you're talking about the funding. And everybody would like all kinds of recreation property, and everybody would like all kinds of brand-new fire equipment, and everybody would like all kinds of patrol coverage. But the problem is when you ask them, are you willing to pay 3 more mills to have all that happen, and they all say no. I'd like a Olympic-sized swimming pool in my yard too, but I don't have that. But it's still on my wish list.
Randy, you've been waiting patiently.
Just
Squirming over there.
no, I'm not squirming, just to firmly clarify what it is I'm saying. There are some things that I don't believe should be on a random public survey. Health and safety issues should not be survey questions. The issue of whether or not we provide additional sheriff's patrol or situations like that should be questions for the ballot, where everybody gets a chance to vote on it. Those are critical health and safety issues. The same thing with the fire department, the apparatus question. That should not be a survey question. That should be a ballot question. So not just a random sampling of residents are picked to answer that question and to formulate a concept in the mind of the board. That needs to be a community-wide question. And voted on as to whether you support that or not. If the answer comes back from the ballot, no, they don't support either, the 80 hours a week, and Trustee Wiegand is absolutely correct. There are a number of communities around that don't provide police services because they can't afford to, and there are others that have their own police forces because that's what they prefer for their community. That's a question that the whole populace needs to answer, not just a random sampling on a survey.
Fifth of it.
Yeah, so I mean, that's the concern that I have, and that's why I phrase it from a health, safety, and welfare type of a situation. Those kinds of elements aren't really survey questions. And if the answer comes back no, then the board has a question to answer. Do you, as a governing body, feel it's important for your community to have enhanced services in those areas? If the question's no, then you don't fund them. Simple as that. And then when something comes up, say, for instance, with the fire apparatus, then your only option is to go do an installment purchase, and pay the freight over 20 years, that way, as opposed to building up a fund balance through a millage. With regard to the marijuana question, that's not going to be answered by us. That's going to be answered by the courts. If referendums pass, the basic question is, does a local government or a state government even have the ability by vote to change federal law? And the answer to me is no, they don't. That's a federal act that has to change. So regardless of what a community does with regard to marijuana facilities, it's still a federal legend drug, and it's still illegal on the federal basis. And from my standpoint as your budget manager, that impacts road funding, that impacts anything that we get federal funds for. If we're in violation of federal law, we may put ourselves not available for any of those federal funded programs, like aid to firefighters, that we just got a huge grant from.
Pardon me. I spent some time addressing what I thought were my concerns about the way that the survey was presented to us for our approval. I still feel strongly that the value of the response that comes back would be much greater if you knew that there was a support for paying for the issue. I'll just stop with that. But there's something else about the survey that I think has drifted from past surveys. And what I mean by that is, I can't recall in the last survey that we had, you're right, it was about 4 or 5 pages long. I don't remember anything in there that would have paralleled a marijuana question. I don't remember anything in there that would have I would remember about police patrol up or down. And I don't remember in that last professionally crafted survey anything about fire apparatus. So see, I think it's drifted, and I agree with our supervisor that you need to pare this down, at least if nothing else. You don't have to agree with my thoughts about it, but I think that if you don't want to ask the question about whether you're willing to pay for something, and that's how strongly you want it, you just want to test their interest, why in the world would you ask these other questions that have nothing to do with the past survey? Why don't you think about just wandering through that survey and deleting marijuana, deleting police patrol, just get back to the basic that the professionals put together on the past survey. I think there's been a lot of work done on it. I'm not knocking that. I think that's great. And I like what's been done. But I just don't, I think there's been a drifting away from the very professional way that professionals did it and the way that it is done now. And while I still want to compliment the work that's been done, I want to suggest that more deletions be made to make it a better survey. Thank you.
It does answer a lot of that. There. Sorry, I wasn't online. It did ask, that was a couple of the questions was, do you want a full-time police department? How important is fire and rescue as a standalone facility? We did ask about some of those questions. Yeah, feel free, Mike.
And Trustee Marks, your comment's well taken, and I understand that, and it's part of the purpose. We wanted to stay as close to the original document as possible for the validity of it. But there's also changing times that are going on, and so that we did try to put some things in that are different than they were back in 2011. And some of the issues, I think there was even, I don't know if we got our alternative energy question in there, but one of the commissioners is interested in what we can do about energy up here. So that's why some of those have changed. But on another comment, and Supervisor Durant, as you'll see that cover letter was written by Dennis Lima, former supervisor. So certainly you're welcome, and I would encourage you to actually write that, give it to the board before it goes out, because it doesn't need, the letter doesn't need to come from the planning commission. It'd be good if it came from the supervisor and the board.
The other thing we're not allowed to copy this either, so we have to be careful. We can't do it verbatim. We're a little restricted because this is something that we paid for, and I'm sure they've got a copyright or something. Yes, Randy?
My last comment, I don't really have a problem with the survey, just minus question 13. I do agree with the manager that, and this whole marijuana thing still perplexes me when it's a federal crime and the states are allowing it. Who is correct? That's still an issue that has not been properly resolved. And the manager is, and I don't think we should touch the issue until it is settled in the courts.
Yep, until we have an option to be able to ask the question if we want to.
Okay.
Anything else?
Thank you.
Should the township ever buy into the marijuana sales and stores and distribution, things like that, you're bordering close to being in some jeopardy over grant funding being approved because of federal funding. I mean, think about what you're doing, for goodness sake. That's one that needs to be deleted overnight.
Anything else? Dave?
Can I float a motion, see how it goes?
Oh, okay.
I would move to approve the survey with the following amendments. Question 9, to be added if funded by additional millage, and the deletion of 13.
I'll support that.
So,
Roll call vote, please.
let me clarify that.
Read the questions.
So this is not to send it back to the commission, or is it?
Well, it'll go back to the planning
Okay.
commission
So-
as a draft.
It would go back to planning commission to make those amendments that were in there, and then to distribute it after they get the cover letter from the board
Supervisor.
supervisor. It'd just be nice to be done working on it.
Ernie?
Can you explain a little bit on 9, what you added, Dave?
Yeah, 9 will say, would read with the amendment, it would read, currently Marquette Township Police Services are provided by the Marquette County Sheriff's Department under contract funded for 80 hours per week of additional patrol coverage. How supportive are you of the Marquette Township maintaining the current Marquette County Sheriff's Department contract hours if funded by additional millage?
It's a bad question, I think.
I could go either way real quick, that too, so.
People aren't gonna understand it. I mean, whatever.
You're saying question 3 would be, 13 would be out?
Yeah, just remove 13.
So just clarification, this would be as presented to us with those 2 revisions.
Yep.
Would go back to the planning commission.
To make the changes and send it
But
out.
But it's being sent back to them to send out,
Right.
Yes.
so it's approving it.
So the question is, do we approve this as it is with those 2 changes and allow them to mail it out?
Yep.
That's the motion.
Correct.
And we've asked for a roll call vote.
Yeah, Trustee Wiegand.
Yes.
Secretary is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Everson?
No.
Trustee Marks?
No?
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2. So that will now go to the planning commission to be sent out with those amendments as stated.
Yes, Ernie?
The cover letter, I hope, will clarify some of these and enlarge on some of the concerns we have.
The cover letter's coming from the supervisor after she presents it to the board.
Which will be probably next meeting.
Put the frosting on somehow.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'll get it to you so you can see it. Okay, that took a lot. Almost as much as you guys spent on it.
But it was good discussion.
Yeah, it's important stuff. I know we need to know how the public thinks. I know that. It's tough. Okay. 7, policy discussion, consideration, development, set a meeting date for committee discussion, work session. We did have one request from a resident to do some of our work sessions at night. So I am throwing that out, if it's possible, or if you want to consider it. It doesn't matter to me, but I want to address
Matter to me.
because a resident had asked at one point. The work sessions are televised. I mean, they can see them on YouTube, but it's the opportunity to be able to be here if they want to. Not that they can't come to the board and say, hey, it's your last work session, blah, 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 you know. Because we can't make any motions at work sessions, so nothing gets done until the next board meeting. But I just wanted to throw that out. So I'm thinking 2 hours, probably.
You already have a work session on the 8th and one on the 30th.
We've got 2 of them already, yep.
Not that,
15th is the next board meeting.
Would you want to do like an hour before the board meeting?
then you mess up the
Committee-
road and
committee.
It's a rec
recreation.
committee on the 15th.
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a thought on that, but we'll have to talk about it at the road committee work session. I just thought it would save everybody having to come out again, and it would give the public a chance if they wanted to come in at 5 o'clock or 5:30.
Yeah, I was getting ready to turn in mileage for my mile and a half.
Hey, that's my job here, to try to bring things to the board. Tell me what you want.
What do we hope to accomplish?
The committees? Oh, I got lots of stuff to talk
That was
about.
the wrong person.
This is policy governance discussions?
Yeah. So at least an hour.
Well, it's a 5 Tuesday month, so we have the 22nd and the 29th that are open.
What's the matter with staying with the 8th and the 30th and working on something in June?
That's okay, too. Like Wednesday, the 6th of June, after our board meeting. But what's your schedule?
Evening's fine. Our meeting's on the 5th of June, but the 6th is a Wednesday.
Yep.
That's fine. The evening's fine for me.
Wednesday evening would work for me.
Like
6
5:30?
6 o'clock.
6,
Yeah, 6 to 8.
6 to 8? Just for something different.
Okay, work session on Wednesday, the 6th,
Right.
June 6th.
6 to 8?
Yes.
Why is that?
Committee discussion. Committees.
Why is it 6 to 8?
Because I had questioned whether we wanted to do an evening meeting. Is our days better for you?
You want to do it at 6 to 8, we'll do it at 6 to 8.
5 to 7?
Huh?
5 to 7?
5 to 7
5 to
is
7's
fine.
fine. Is that better?
Can anyone make a Monday or a Thursday instead of a Wednesday?
Yeah?
Yeah, we can do that too.
Thursday's good for me.
Thursday's
I got
good for
written down
me.
with-
Monday's good for me.
Okay, you come on the 6th. We'll be here.
Short
Monday to
meeting.
work for me.
Monday, the 4th, from 5 to 7 on a Monday?
5 to 7.
I got fire
Oh,
hall.
you have to fire.
Whoops, pardon me.
Thursday, the 7th.
Thursday's okay.
5 to 7?
Today's the what, 7th?
Yeah.
June.
Go ahead and tell me what it is. I'm going to be in the armory. Tell me what time.
5 to 7? On the 7th?
5 to 7. I'll try.
So I'll move to schedule a work session for committee discussion on Thursday, June 7th, from 5 to 7.
Support.
That'll be policy governance.
Yep. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
It'll be about committees and the policy governance.
Yep.
That will be the purpose of the work session.
What's the purpose of the one on the 8th then?
That's the water discussion.
And the 30th?
That's the landfill discussion.
There you go.
The 8th is water?
30th is hopefully
Landfill.
everybody, not just us. That's a work session, but it's a forum
All the
discussion.
constituents.
The city said they'll be here. So if it's just us and them,
What time is that May 8th one?
2 to 4.
Okay, I got that down.
that's EWRF. Okay, so 5 to 7,
Yeah.
June 7th. Okay, thank you. Next up, we had no items pulled from the agenda, that's 8A. And committee updates. What do we have?
Oh, all kinds of things.
Oh, good. I only, just one line, though. You'll have to do shorthand.
You ready?
Yep.
First, for the planning commission, the May 9th meeting has been canceled due to lack of agenda items. The master plan review of Chapter 5 edits were discussed and will be reviewed in the draft form at the May 23rd meeting, which is the next one. Fry Chevrolet zoning compliance was heard at the last meeting, and there was a motion to approve a buffer yard with that included a 6-foot screening fence along the southern edge of the property, which is along the Brookton Road. And now let's see, I could just read the whole thing, I guess. It was a long motion. It was to approve the revised buffer plan to include the 6-foot screening fence along the entire southern border except for 24-foot driveway area, and to require the area not utilizing a berm as depicted on the 4/20/2018 plot plan as submitted to be constructed with a gradient toward Fry Chevrolet, ensuring that the water runoff and/or snowmelt cannot migrate onto Brookton Road. Also, that the plantings within the buffer yard conform to a 15-foot type E buffer yard as described within the zoning ordinance. That was the motion.
Wow.
That's why I wrote it down.
Good idea.
The Marquette detailing zoning compliance, that'll be taken up at the May 23rd meeting as opposed to the March 9. We have not gotten the final determination by legal counsel as to what the status of the zoning compliance is. And the trail and road event safety, in as much as Attorney Zappa was present at the last meeting, a brief discussion concerning the proposed guidelines that may be considered for distribution to various events passing through the township on our trail system and any implied liability that would be incurred by the township resulting from that distribution. It was determined that until a draft copy of any proposed distribution was reviewed, it would be impossible to determine any possible liability. After numerous discussion continued, it was determined that the Recreation Committee should develop a more specific outline of what was being considered for the Commission's review. At that time, we would have legal weigh in and see if we have a liability issue. With the Recreation Committee, we've already briefed that at the last meeting. Just a reminder of the spring cleanup day, Saturday, May the 26th from 10 to 2. And there'll be a pre-cleanup meeting in the Marquette Township boardroom right here on the 26th at 10 o'clock. And the Road Committee, the Road Transportation Facilities Plan, Chapter 4 review considered tonight. It was just in front of this board meeting. The first half of the Chapter 4 is complete. The balance will be completed in June. Asset Management Program is developed, has no more update yet. Road Rehab Project Maintenance, Planning Administrator met with UPA and anticipated bid closing near the end of May. Moran Street has been removed from consideration in as much as the county was the initial installer of that portion of road that's having some serious erosion problems. From the, if you're all familiar, right out here about a half a block down where the creek runs out onto the road, that road's all coming apart there. So that's been removed from the road rehab project until we get some response from the county on that, see what they're going to do with it. And recently there's been some couple of maintenance issues that have come out in the form of potholes. There's some on Brookton Road. There's a rather large one on Venture Drive. We're trying to consider if that should be added to the road rehabilitation bid for a proper fix versus a cold patch and drive over with a truck a few times.
It's good. You're
So-
good.
Can
Randy?
you explain that Moran Street problem?
Yeah, I can. Moran Street was, that section of Moran Street was put in by the county just about the time this property was purchased, and they were considering building a township hall. They were supposed to have run a drain off of that creek underneath the road, put it on the other side where it belongs. either the drain has been plugged for the last 10 years or they didn't put it in because the water has been running down the side of Moran Street all the way down to Erickson before it makes a left turn and continues down to the creek bed down there. That continuously wet area of the pavement, finally this year has, for anybody that's noticed it, is all heaved up, and the road on the left side is totally destroyed. And so the manager, if you want to weigh in, we're talking to the county, see if they're going to do anything with it.
Yep, it'll be posed to them to see if they're have any resources to repair that.
You do have?
Don't know yet. Comment that I was going to make is that the issue on Venture was installed as part of the DDA project, so there may be some potential there as well for some of that repair. But yet,
Yeah, that's right.
Commerce is also in bad shape.
That's why I raised the issue, and Commerce is not part of the road rehab project because that's the county trunk line. And that's why I raised the issue, if you want to include those 3 or 4 potholes on Brookton and Venture in the road rehab bid.
Is that going to come to the board as a recommendation or suggestion?
I'm sure it will when the bids are set and going out, and before they're, obviously we can't award it until the board says okay.
It seemed like I remember circling on the planning commission minutes, the question about the liability issue with, I guess, like the Iron Rain Roll or any of those races coming through. Do I understand that a legal opinion was asked?
No, we had a general discussion about it at the planning commission because the attorney was there to discuss the Fry buffer yard and the Marquette detailing issues.
So you got
So he
basic
weighed,
information.
so he weighed in on that discussion.
Okay, good. Okay,
Did that pretty much cover it, Roger?
just watching our funds here. Okay, any questions on that part of the committee?
No, what Dave has brought to our attention about Fry, I think that goes back to when they were first given a variance in the front building.
6 years ago.
Just a little refresher, they were given a variance, and part of the conditions of that variance was they would develop a buffer yard along their southern border, and that has not been done yet.
That's what I was thinking. And I thought the fence was part of it originally. Maybe it's expanded.
Type E
now.
buffer yard requires a fence if you're only going to be 15 feet wide. But we've been trying to negotiate that away without success at this point. They're supposed to be done with it by the end of this construction season, but we'll see.
All right. I want to give you a quick update on the solid waste, because there was a special meeting. I did let you know that there was a special meeting held last Thursday, and I was under the impression that that was going to be a follow-up engineering discussion about the bids that were opened the week before, because I got to that meeting. And it was more than that. And I was standing in the parking lot loading the van with my suitcase when I found out that that was the case, that there was a meeting that day. It had been posted 11 o'clock the day before, 11:30. And the agenda had a whole lot more than just the bid discussion. It had tipping fees, administration and materials management for the building project, which is what was the bid issue, scale purchase, 1 or 2 scales, recycling infrastructure design bid award, top coat purchase, and MERS, and then Marquette Township. So this was like a full working agenda at a special meeting that was supposed to be just for discussing the bids that had been opened the week before that. So I had no internet and no way to get this because this was sent to me, didn't know how to get it to Randy or somebody to go to this meeting and find out. First of all, I wanted to know why this was such an expansive agenda. Secondly, why is Marquette Township on there? All the rest of the agenda items had backup material on them. And there was nothing on the township. We were 4G and there was nothing. So I was able to use Darlene's cell phone to have her send the agenda and the packet to Randy. Got a hold of him, he was busy, and I said, who else can we send? Is Dave available, or Pete, or somebody? Ernie could go and just find out what was going to be discussed at this meeting. And he said, how about if we send Roger? And I said, great, if he's not in court or something, if he's available. So thankfully, he dropped everything he was doing and tore up to Negaunee Township for this special meeting. So I'd like to have him weigh in on his, I mean, I took some notes, but I'd rather have it come from the horse's mouth on what he heard.
Well, primarily,
Did you get that on, Roger? Is that on? Okay. No?
my purpose in going there was primarily to determine what the Marquette Township agenda item was, because everything else had agenda documentation for it, and there was nothing for that one. I arrived at the meeting, and that was one of the last business items. So they did raise the tipping fees at $2 per ton, which I understand was discussed at the previous meeting as well. Not having been to a Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority meeting in years, for any reason, things that were discussed at prior meetings had little or no meaning for me. However, when it got to the Marquette Township item, the chair indicated that there is a joint work session meeting scheduled for May 30th with the township, and really it probably makes sense not to discuss anything about Marquette Township until after that. So I really don't know at this point what was going to be discussed until someone from Marquette Township arrived, but there was no action taken. They indicated that they intended to participate in the May 30 meeting here, and nothing was discussed. The other items were acted upon that were on the agenda. The scales were purchased or authorized, and there were bidding actions taken as indicated in the agenda.
So the first comment you got when you walked in the door,
What's he here for?
and what did we do wrong now? That's good. They need to be on their toes. So there was probably going to be some kind of discussion about us, who knows what. And I don't know if they knew that I was gone or cared, or I don't know. It just irked me to no end. And all of these business items taken care of at a non-regular meeting when people could have been there to ask questions. I mean, tipping fees went up, just like that.
Were you surprised?
Yes. Yes. This should be done at the monthly meeting. This is business items. If you're gonna call a special meeting to talk about bids, that's what you do. Yes, Dave.
How can tipping fees go up $2 when we're not paying any money to recycle? Just thought I'd throw that out
Are
there.
you done now?
Yeah, I'm done.
Yes, John.
I admire what efforts are being made to understand what goes on at solid waste, but I put together something that might help understand what the problem is that we face.
Whole page.
You may need one more.
Okay.
What you're looking at is the authority and the fact that we're indicating that there's 7 members, but I think each of us need to know how they're appointed. And when you know where they're from, it'll help us understand where we might best direct our comments. 2 members are appointed by the city of Marquette. This all comes from the original organization. 2 from city of Marquette, 3 are appointed by the county commissioner, 1 by Sands Township, and 1 by the membership itself, which is kind of unusual. But what that resulted in, and I've listed the people that are now serving, is the membership itself listed somebody from the city of Marquette, so that on the board now, 2 county commissioners represent 3 members are from the city of Marquette, 2 members from Ishpeming, just because of the way they were appointed, and 1 member from Gwen and 1 member from Sands. The makeup is by itself unusual. And so when we're talking about how we might best address our concerns, I'm suggesting that our 2 county commissioners who represent a portion of our township, Commissioner DePetro and Adamany, may be the best place for us to represent the concerns that we now hold. At least let them know that it would help if the townships had better representation.
That's why I proposed that the County Township Association kind of take that on for all, because they represent all of us, all 19. And I did hear from 1 city commissioner, well, I heard from 2 that they plan on being at the May 30th meeting, because I just happened to run into them, but 1 said they don't have a clue what solid waste is doing. They don't get a report from their people, their appointees. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It's an independent group.
It's an authority. I mean, they have the authority to do
Well,
what they want, but they also
If
represent
nothing
us.
else, it's an authority that we need to be aware of, that when you create an authority, it's a very serious issue.
Take on a life of their own. I'm not going to give you an MTA report. I did not have my computer from last Friday until about 2 o'clock this afternoon, so all my notes were on here. So I will give you something in writing at for the next meeting from the MTA. It was outstanding. I think it was the best, for me, it was the best seminar I'd gone to. I learned a whole lot of stuff. So if there's nothing else about solid waste, we'll set that one aside. We have no committee updates. Public comment. You're good. Okay. Announcements. Anybody have anything to share? Yes, Randy.
Election inspectors, I've had 2 retirements recently in my group, so we're going to be looking for some. I mean, I have enough, but anyone that's interested, either contact myself or Lois. We'll get you directed to a class, and you have to be certified to work the elections. There's going to be 2 this year, 1 in August and 1 in November. And if you get certified, you can work anywhere in the state, so it's good for anywhere in the state.
And what do they do? Give us a kind of a quick synopsis of what they're responsible for.
What they have various duties, but they can do anything in the polling place. Like when you come in, they can direct you to like the poll book and help you with, they can't vote for you, of course, but they take your ballot and put it in the machine, and there's various things that they have to do, but there's a little bit of training that goes involved, and once you get it on the job training, it's a lot easier, but we only do these things once every 2 years, so sometimes it's hard to get going again, but it's not very hard, and if you want to, you do get paid, so you do get a hourly wage for working. So if anyone's interested to come out and help out, I'd be appreciated to do that.
Are they required to be there for the whole day?
No, we can actually schedule you. We have like 2 shifts, one like 6:15 to 2 o'clock, and then from 2 o'clock to close, which is like 10 o'clock, so you don't have to work the whole day if you don't like, if you can't do that. And most people work 2 shifts, so.
Okay. That's good information. Pete?
On May 9th, we have the Marquette Township Association Spring Banquet. I'd just like to know how many can make that, plan on attending. It's at the Negaunee Township Hall.
I'll be there.
So, John or Dan?
No.
Dan?
I'm looking.
Okay,
It's on what, it's Wednesday the 9th, right?
yes,
5:30.
5:30. David, are you?
I'll get to you tomorrow, Pete.
Okay, all right.
That's the same day as that assessing training. I'm going to be in that all day.
What time is that?
I'll probably be ready for a drink and dinner.
5:30.
30 social, 6:30.
Yeah, dinner from 6 to 8, and a little meeting in a little bit, and then they have prizes and stuff like that, so. It's a good time, you meet other township members from different townships, and, it's a very nice meal.
Put me down.
Did anybody sign up? This is a little off the track, sorry. For that assessing training, there's 2 classes, one in May here and one in.
For what? What was that?
Sent you.
Assessing.
What kind of training?
Assessing.
It's
Oh.
it's not training, it's a class.
Oh, okay.
To learn about the state of Michigan. I remember telling you guys about it a couple times. Was a little upset with Dulcie that none of the board members had signed up. So I signed up. There's one on May 9th. It's all day. It's like 8 to 4:30. And there's another one in July. So I'd like to encourage you to think about it so we don't lose face with the state. It's an all-day thing. That's rough. It's hard for me to give up a whole day work too. But
The background on this is that we lobbied long and hard to have the tax commission starting to have meetings in the UP, so everybody didn't have to travel to Lansing. So this is the first one that they've scheduled, and that's why Dulcie is trying to rally, folks to participate in it to show that we appreciate them coming to the UP.
so the July one is on the 11th, Wednesday, the 11th, from 8 to 5. Otherwise, May 9th. So I just wanted to throw that in. Everybody wants us. Anything else? Any other announcements to share? Okay, managers report.
While everybody's still here in the audience, the large crowd that we have, putting together community surveys is hard. We've been through several of them. It takes a lot of work. There's a lot of consternation. There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of difficulty in determining just exactly what it is you want to ask and how you want to ask it. So for those that participated in putting the survey together that was before you tonight, I want to thank them for their efforts on behalf of the township. It's a thankless job, and it's hard. With regard to the manager's report, you do have a printed report. First of all, the next event that the Community Events Committee has coming up is the annual car show and cruise that takes place in the parking lot of the Westwood Mall. That's coming up on Father's Day weekend, June 16th, which is a Saturday, from 10 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon. A lot of static displays, a lot of unique vehicles. It's a good time to be had by all. It's usually a lot of fun. And encourage everybody to come out. If you're driving by, stop in. If you have a car that you're kind of particularly proud of or somewhat embarrassed by, bring it down. We're happy to be in there. There's a couple of contests, best of show. We've got a boatload of prizes that are donated by local businesses that are raffled off to all of the participants. You get a free lunch out of it if you register your car or your truck or your whatever that you can drive, walk, push or pull onto the site. So it's coming up Saturday, June 6th, 10 o'clock in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. You don't have to be there all day or whatever. You can come in for a little while and leave if you wish. Goes on regardless of the weather, so keep that in mind. We did respond, the township responded with very short notice to House Bill 4986, which was submitted and championed by Representative Dave Madarin. And it basically deals with the personal property tax exemptions for disabled veterans. His proposal is, rather than have it come off of our property tax revenue, have it be a state income tax credit, which we did submit to the committee a letter of support for that particular motion. I have not heard how that went. I haven't seen anything published on it yet as to what the committee took those comments and went forward. So don't know what the result was, but the language is in your in the report for you. We're a little behind the curve on starting the ball games at Lions Field. We, as of up till yesterday, we still had snow cover. I wasn't over there yet today, so I don't know what it's like, but it's certainly wet. It's certainly wet, so there's a little bit of a delay, but they'll be starting the games here pretty quick as soon as it dries out. The Zoning Board of Appeals does not, as of the writing of my manager's report, did not have a hearing scheduled. There now is one scheduled. I believe it's on May 16th, which is a dimensional variance. It'll be in your next packet as part of my manager's report, but just a heads up for you in case you want to sit in on that. It is currently posted. I saw the ad in the paper. That's what brought it to my attention. And just a little piece of information for you. We, believe it or not, we are now 6 months into the operation of our ambulance already. Started September 15th, and as of March 31st, just to give you a little snapshot of where we're at, between September 15th and March 31st, that 6-month period, we had 154 EMS calls that we would have responded to regardless of whether we had an ambulance or not. Okay, so, and as you'll recall, previously we would have responded with a pickup truck and two staff members, basically, which was our standard response. Of those 154 calls in that 6-month period, 68 resulted in an actual transport with the ambulance. And the total cost for all staffing, including the standbys that would have been at the hall standing by for a backup call, totaled $27,469. That would have occurred regardless. The 68 transports, however, generated $17,800 in revenue that we would not have accrued previously. So 44% of the runs, the 68, generated 65% of the total payroll for all 154 runs. So I think we are well on our way to at least breaking even for the first year of operation, if not being on the positive side.
And all Randy
Just a
wanted
heads
was
up for you.
$1.
Pardon me?
All Randy wanted was $1. He said if
Ah,
you were
really?
$1 up.
Well, and we know definitely that our efforts with transport saved at least one life, definitely, and possibly 2 others that are still in the hospital. But that one was an absolute positive. They were brought back in during transport. So,
Lynn?
Yes, John.
I want to add to our manager's report. The ZBA will be meeting at 5:30 on Wednesday, the 16th of this month. They have an issue at Riverside.
Any other questions for the manager?
I got one quick one.
Sure.
How many households are we talking about in the township for disabled vets that are affected?
oh, I don't know that. I don't have that number right offhand, but I know in conversation with our assessor that we have a pretty sizable population of disabled vets, and it has been a fairly significant impact on our property tax collections in the last 2 years.
Several of those, I mean, most of those she's talking about, they do qualify for
Oh, yes,
the-
yeah.
Okay.
We have a fairly high population in the township. I can't give you an exact number, but I can get that for you and
No,
get it out to you,
I was curious.
tomorrow.
I'm just curious.
It could impact.
Yeah, it
Well,
could
it's
be
not
substantial.
just the veterans, but it's also their survivors.
Right.
Houses and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
And
So,
it's not like we'd be against it.
no, not at all. We're
It's just the
certainly,
idea
No,
that they're putting
no.
the burden, the financial
Right,
burden on
yeah,
us.
right.
certainly very, very supportive of the concept and the benefit. I mean, we're certainly grateful for the service that they've put in, and, and simply the fact that they're disabled, they serve that little extra measure that not necessarily all of the veterans did. But the manner in which the state put that into place is just another piece of our revenue stream that got taken away without taking away the responsibility for providing the service. And that was the basis upon which we responded, and were clear in our response that we were grateful and we supported relief for the disabled veterans and their survivors. But it was more appropriate to have that be as an income tax credit statewide as opposed to a local millage type issue,
Let them bear the
or
burden.
local
let them
property tax issue.
Pay for the,
Just another unfunded
yeah.
mandate. Ernie?
No, once I read all that and I looked at our response, which was great, but I got thinking, they aren't gonna do anything because it's gonna affect their pocketbook. So if something does happen, I'll be very surprised in that too. So they're great at taking all the glory, having someone else pay the bill in that.
Oh, absolutely.
Look at the dark store. They can't even fix that yet.
Personal property taxes, dark store, veterans preference, religious organizations have been expanded beyond traditional churches. There's all kinds of things.
And the local community's supposed to absorb all that.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason that our revenue is at 2014 levels. I mean, and that's the reason. The reason is our revenue stream has been depleted. Now, the most recent one was they've added 15 more communities to receive revenue sharing at the expense of all of the other communities. So our revenue sharing is likely going to be reduced as well for 2019.
Again.
Again.
Okay. Anything else for the manager?
Lynn?
Yes, sir.
The manager's report brought up an issue that I forgot to mention in my board.
Okay.
Committee members, and it's about the pickleball.
Yes.
That was sent back to the planning commission. The planning commission took the managers, put out an email with some comments on it, and we sent that back to the rec committee to put it all in the mix with extending the ice season. But that is going to be nearer to the end of this year before a recommendation comes back, at least the end of summer. And it was the consensus of the planning commission, it's certainly up to the board, but the planning commission was a little, don't understand why the pickleball group cannot just go over there and play pickleball if they so desire, as long as they set up their equipment and take down their equipment when they're done. If there's nobody else using it, it's a community park, and while this whole thing is being debated, and we're getting ready to make a recommendation as to what we want to do with the ice service, it is the opinion of the planning commission that they wanted to pass on to the board, is they do not understand why there would be a restriction on using that for pickleball in the meantime, as long as they don't leave equipment there and they don't do any permanent markings on the facilities.
They can use tape.
Chalk.
They can use
Chalk.
tape. They set up their tents, or their nets. And the reason now he was over there one day was making some chalk marks on there. He went over and actually cleaned the whole ice surface up.
Got 10 hours in it.
And did some chalking on there so he could see how many courts he could get in there. But their intention is, if they use that, is just to go over and mark their courts out with tape, set their nets up, play their pickleball. When they're done, they pick all their stuff up and go home. So it's planning commission's consideration that they don't know why that's not just fine to go on all summer. And they'll certainly give us a good idea of if that's going to be a problem or not.
Okay, Pete?
That one person was over taking care of it. He got 10 hours and he cleaned the whole rink, spread the water out, let it dry, cleaned it, blew it, and it took, it looks very nice. And it's kind of nice to see someone using that thing, and it's for the residents, and they should be able to use it as, we don't, if somebody went to play ball, are we going to say you can't play ball there? It's for the residents, it's designed for the residents, and they should be able to use it as their will.
Randy?
Well, I can certainly clarify what my comment was and what my email was. We have had numerous groups, like the pickleball group, contact us about using the ice rink for various purposes, and we have maintained what the board directed, that there has not been any kind of a decision on the board's part about allowing groups to utilize the facility. I can tell you that if we're going to allow the pickleball group to utilize the ice rink, then we need to also contact the other groups and to give them the ability to utilize it as well. roller derby, junior hockey, several basketball, several others, and we've basically told them that until the board makes a decision on the use of that facility, that it was general use, not for any particular group use. We've said no teams. That's been your position. So if that was the purpose of me communicating with the Planning Commission and the Recreation Committee, is that you have not decided at this point how that facility is going to be utilized, other than for ice skating and for hockey. You set a schedule. The other comment that I heard when they were here is there's 150 members of that group. That means that rink will be totally and continually in use for that purpose, and not for any other purpose, because it's free.
Today, they were playing pickleball, trying to, on one end, the other side, they were playing hockey. They were shooting against a net. We set aside the baseball field for Little League, for practice games, same thing.
But they pay for it. They pay for that.
Contract with them.
Well, what are we
Under contract.
contracting it out for? You just said you don't want to
No,
contract it
the
out.
board contracted the ball field with Little League and with Marquette Senior High School for softball. They pay for that.
And what do they pay for that?
They pay seasonally. They cover the maintenance, they cover the setup, they cover the operation, and they paid for part of the field construction.
Okay, well, maybe we'll charge for pickleball then.
Well, that's my point.
Yeah.
You know, and that was the suggestion that I had, is that you establish a schedule as to when things can be used for what, and establish a fee structure. But the board has yet to
I
do that.
just don't like this schedule completely, that nobody can use it, because in the wintertime, when the people are playing hockey, this guy's walking down with 3 little kids because they couldn't play on the ice rink, because the hockey was up there. And that wasn't scheduled game, it was just practice.
I understand.
And I don't think that we built that thing for Northern Michigan University. I think we built it for the residents because we thought there was a need.
Well, we did, and my recommendation, if you'll recall, was that it's a general skating rink. The board decided to allow hockey. So that's where the schedule
Oh,
came
we just
from,
have
and
to
I'm
make
just
a
saying.
motion that we allow pickleball then, the same thing, in order to get
No,
off.
what I'm saying is there is a large demand for that space, because it's free. And if the board wants to utilize that for organized activities like pickleball, rollerblading, roller derby,
You rattled off about
those kinds of things, then they need to have equal access to it, and you need to establish a schedule for use. That's all I'm saying, is that because there is a larger demand than just the pickleball players.
And then it's coming August, the community days, they're talking about having a tournament over there, just like we do for baseball.
The Community Events Committee.
Right, and then do we charge them for that, but we don't charge the ball players for playing at the ball field?
That's something you're sponsoring as a competition. I mean, you know, it's Community Events Committee is sponsoring as a competition, just like they did with the Northern Exhibition Team and the Mutineers, and those were exhibitions to generate revenue for the ice rink.
This is up to us. We can talk about it
Yeah,
and make
absolutely.
changes. What Randy's trying to impress is this is the way we structured it. If we want to change it, we can change it.
Absolutely.
We'll have to have another work session. Or we can do it at a board meeting.
Well, I don't think you need a work
As
session.
it's set in
I
right
think,
now.
yeah, I think if you want to expand the use beyond the ice season formally, then kick it back to the Recreation Committee like you did with the ice rink, and have them come up with a use provision, whether it be a schedule or whether it be a fee schedule or whatever. And if there's a reservation type situation, like using the entire surface for pickleball, it'd be reserved through ANDRA, just like the ball field is when it's not being used for ball teams. So we can control it, so we know what uses are being on there.
She asked me the other day, she said, do I have to start scheduling something for pickleball or whatever? And I said, no, don't do anything yet until we come
Yeah.
up with some kind of a plan.
We just need to be able to
Confused.
communicate to the residents, you know, what the uses, the allowable uses are and when, that's all. Keeping in mind, we do have quiet hours.
What we can't do as an individual board member is go out and tell people, sure, go ahead, put your stripes down or put your nets up, do what you want.
Well,
We don't have that
Well, we
authority
didn't
as an
answer that guy
individual
when he
board
said,
member.
what could I do? It was never,
Call the office.
no, but he said, we didn't get the answer, and so they just went and did it. They're residents of the township.
That's fine.
Yeah,
What I'm
so-
saying is we, as individual board members, cannot tell
Right.
guests or residents, you know,
Well-
yeah, it's okay.
Don't play tennis
The
there.
board still
Because we didn't tell
controls.
them if you can play tennis or not.
Well, we do
Yes.
have a designated pickleball court, same as the tennis court.
Yes, they already have one. Actually, two out there. Dave,
Question.
I know Dave's hand is
Just
just
to
gonna.
clarify what the planning commission was saying, and the reason they came to that recommendation is the pickleball group is not teams. The pickleball groups is a group of like-minded individuals that go out and play a game. And that's why it was the recommendation of the planning commission that inasmuch as it's not teams, and we know there's a thing about teams over there, is that if somebody wanted to go over and set it up and play pickleball, as a resident, they can certainly do that, because it's not a team function.
You can use the tennis courts if nobody's playing tennis too, though.
And that's true.
Because that particular area, in my mind, can be used for more. If you already have one that's
And
not being used.
I'm not lobbying in favor of pickleball. I am just saying that in the planning commission's consensus is there's nothing the matter with somebody going over there and setting up a net and playing pickleball if they want to go play pickleball, because that's what the rink is used for in the summertime. They can use it for pretty much whatever they want,
It
as
only,
long as they're not altering the facilities.
it only becomes an issue if they set up 4 courts and occupy the entire rink to the exclusion of anybody
And we will know
else.
by the end of the summer if it's become an issue.
I agree with that. I think that's fair.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
The only question I have is, does Pete have a uniform?
It'd be kind of hard to get a ball by me, John.
I think the term is
I
blocker.
don't need no net.
I hadn't even heard of pickleball
I didn't
until 2
either.
weeks ago.
There is a National Pickleball Association. It's big, it's a big, it's a
amazing how
big
fast.
sport, and it's a growing sport, and, it's a legitimate sport. The only concern that we have is we have one location for residents to be able to do a variety of things, and I think the board needs to regulate how that's used. That makes my life so much easier every day.
Yes, Ernie?
I don't really have a problem with them going over and just setting up and playing. What I have a problem is if they start setting up timeframes when they're gonna be there and scheduling continually. That's when I start having some
And
problems.
banning others.
So, and, without setting up some schedule through the township and that too.
Well, they've never suggested they wanted to do that. Everything that they've come in and said to us is they just want to go over there and set up their nets and play. And, I mean, until they've established that it's an issue, then the board can deal with it if it's an issue. But until then, it's just a couple of residents going over and setting up their stuff and playing pickleball.
And like I said, they're playing hockey on one side today and pickleball on the other side.
But if we have the tennis court set up to play pickleball and you can have 2 teams over there, why wouldn't they use that? So
Well,
that,
because 2 teams is not enough.
I guess. Lots, everybody has to have lots.
Everybody, like Sands, they have about, what do they got, 4 or 6 outside, and they got 2 inside. Marquette Gym, or the senior center down there, they got 4 inside, and it's not enough.
Okay, we'll see if they
They got
take
Lakeview
over.
Arena, they got Chalkley. It's, like Randy said, it's a growing thing, and, you know,
Okay. Are we good on that? Any motions, Randy, you want to share with us?
We did have a few tonight. Okay, consent agenda was approved, the first motion. There was a roll call because of the budget amendment. Second motion of the evening was the approval of the agenda as amended, because we had a privileged comment with the BLP director. The third motion under community linkage was to approve the community survey with the amendments. And it was a roll call vote. It passed. Fourth motion was to set up a meeting for committee discussion under policy governance on June 7th, 5 to 7 here. And I believe that's it. I don't have any action items either.
Anything else we need to add to any future agendas?
Pickleball.
know of?
Could,
Not for the 15th. We've got a pretty busy 15th schedule for that meeting. So eat your Wheaties before you come to that one.
I would like to.
Yes, Randy?
Yes, one last question. On item 4D1, the notice of the hearing on UPCO, is there any comment that the board wishes to make on that? It's basically about rates, rate recalculation. Is just let me know.
Why don't they have the hearings up here?
Never, yeah.
You never have the hearings here.
Okay. Any,
Biggest problem is you have to go online and try to read through all that stuff to see just exactly what they're talking about.
I did it once and that was all.
I know.
Wish we
Any-
could have, I know the last minute thing about having Mr. Carpenter up here, but I know Pete Thorson, he came in, he would like to make a comment, but he can't make it until, I wish we would have told him that if he wanted to speak on that, he could have did it under public comment.
We already passed public comment. He would have had to have done it ahead of time.
Right, I know that, but,
Or stay.
yeah. I just feel bad that he has something on his mind and very important, because he's the one who's gonna live with this thing.
Well, the township can only do so much. I mean,
Yeah.
that's another discussion. Any board member comment? Yes, Randy?
Well, my report will be verbal from the MTA conference. I attended also with Supervisor Durant, and Planner McCarthy also went. It was very good. I thank the township for the resources to send us, because I think it's important that we go. There will be another, it's going to be the UP Summit. It's going to be August 1 and 2 in Escanaba. So I think it's a Wednesday, Thursday at the Island Resort in Harris. So if any of the board members would like to go, I would encourage them to go to that. I think it's pretty important. They won't have they'll have some good discussions, but they won't have the bigger courses as they did at the regular conference. But some of the classes I attended were what townships can and can't do, what you can spend money on, what you can't spend money on. And I think we're right on point in that those policies are. I had an election update, and that was pretty helpful in seeing what's coming down the pipe in the world of elections. So a lot of things in the legislators' hands right now, and we'll see where they go. We had me and Supervisor Durant attended a course or a discussion in water and sewer, and that was pretty good, I thought, with how you do rate structures and that on your infrastructure and different things, and I thought that was pretty well done. But the major point I'd like to bring back is in all the courses and things and the folks we've talked to, Marquette Township is in really good shape compared to some townships in the state. We are doing things right, we're transparent, and we're doing a lot. I think we're doing, compared to other townships we spoke with, I think we're doing pretty well. So I just want to bring that point as I think Marquette Township, compared to the rest of the state, is doing pretty well.
That's obvious. Pete?
I'd like to just bring up a comment that we had before about the tax tribune. I really feel strongly that we should donate something to it. We're saying the same thing as we did before when no one else would help us out, but it's very important that we win this thing, because we're a good example of how it's going to hurt us, and it's not going to stop unless we change it. And the only thing that changes, they have to fight it in court, and it costs money. There was a plea today at the meeting that people in townships donate to it.
What meeting? What meeting?
This was a Superior Trade Zone.
Superior what?
Trade Zone, or the Brownfield thing.
Okay.
And, but we have other things through our mail and that I just think very strongly that we should do something. Don't have to be $1,000 or $10,000 or that way. We should do something, because we are a good example of when others did not do something. Oh, bad it got, so.
Okay.
And also, all the materials I've got, I'll put it in a file in the office, so if any of the board members would like to read the PowerPoints that were there, I'll have that for them, so. I know Pete likes to look at them, so I'll have it in a
I
folder
read some
for you.
already. I got some of your emails too, so.
Anything else for commenting? Just one more motion then.
Move to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.